Hello, my Graphic Design 2 students. I'm so sorry we're not able to meet today, but I hope y'all are enjoying your extended holiday weekend, and maybe we'll even get some snow later on today too. Since we're not meeting today, I at least want to go over some of the things that we're going to be talking about and applying to your restaurant menu design, and the best way that we can move forward with getting them looking good. By now, you should have copied over all the information. But today, let's talk a little bit about the design of it and the best way and the best practice you can get to lay out your design so that it's readable, but also it's visually inviting. And to do that, we're going to do that through layout hierarchy. So let's start the show. So when you think of hierarchies, think of them as levels of importance. And those levels of importance are where you're visually telling the reader to point their eyes and to do whatever that needs to be done to understand the page. Hey, even this main page that I have here has a hierarchy to it. I bet the first thing that you saw was the headline, and then the next thing you read came down here, making your text pop. And maybe you didn't even notice or pay attention to the information that's down here, but that was also on the page. Your eye was completely led throughout the entire design. Now, creating hierarchy is all about the structure of whatever page you have. This doesn't have to be typographic either. This can also apply to any visual image that you create. And especially if you're combining text and images together on the same page, it really is important. Take a look at this typographic hierarchy that we have here for this body copy. Now, right now, it's pretty wimpy. It's pretty plain Jane. There's not much that's visually interesting about just this body of text. Yes, I can quickly tell there's some sort of a headline to it. There's maybe a little break here, but right now everything is pretty much the same size, same weight. It's certainly the same font, and it's not the kind of thing that I would want to visually read. However, once you start adding some contrast and some repetition of elements and some good alignment issues with this, then you're going to start to really engage your readers and engage your audience. Notice how this has a headline that's nice, it's bold. Man, it's the first thing that I see in this entire visual collective. The second is the subhead, not as bold as the headline, but it definitely draws my eye down the page until finally we get into the body copy of it. And so this kind of sets the stage up and makes it a little bit easier to understand what all this is about. Like I said before, whenever you make a structure, these are the three most common methods of structuring your hierarchy. Now, there's other different ways you can do it, but these are the three most ones that you're going to see used over and over again in my work, hopefully starting to see it in your work and starting to recognize it just out in the field, out in life itself. You've got contrast, repetition, and alignment. Let's have a look at contrast first. First off, contrast is all about making things visually different. Have a look at this cartoon. Now, if I told you that, yes, they are different, I mean, after all, you've got two men, but this guy's got a ponytail and this guy's got some more hair on the top. Well, yeah, they're different, but they're not very visually different. As a matter of fact, if I only looked at this for a few seconds, I could barely tell the differences at all. I really have to hunt and peck to try to find those different changes. I just now noticed that the star's on one and he's got polka dots on the other. If you're going to do contrast in your design, go big. Make things very contrasting. Check out this second image. So now you've got the old man, but now he's contrasting with this other character that's completely different. First of all, he's old, he's young. He's tall, he's short. They're wearing different clothes. They're different races. They're different in everything that they've got. He's got dull clothes, he's got bright clothes. If you're going to make something contrasting, people can pick up on very different contrasts. They can pick up on the dissimilarities between the two. And so if you can maximize the amount of differences that you have in your designs, then your contrast is really going to pop and it's going to make it really stand out a lot better. Here's a great example of a simple newsletter, and I've seen tons of newsletters laid out like this. Now, right now, visually, there's not much really interesting about it. Again, it's a wimpy design. Yes, there is a headline to it. Yes, there I can definitely tell some subheads and some different things that are here. But at a quick glance, it's still not very interesting. Here's the same newsletter, but now you can really tell where the headline is. You can definitely tell what's a subhead and what's a body copy to it. It's the same information, but one of these is more visually appealing simply because there's a lot more contrast to the design of the elements. And there's different ways they're doing some different contrasts. Have a look at this, this resume that we've got. On the left side, you've got a basic plain Jane resume. He's got his picture, he's got all the information. Hey, it reads well, visually it actually works, but here's the same information and they've pumped up the contrast. His picture is much bigger than the text. It's got a bold outline color behind it. Hey, he's repeated that color, and I can definitely now pick up on his accomplishments that have a little line that's setting everything off. He's got each of the titles for each of his accomplishments in education bold in red. This is much easier to read in addition to being much more visually appealing. So when you think of contrast, there's a couple of different things that you can contrast in your designs. First, there's contrast simply through styles of type. Here's a list of the rules of life. Right now, the one at the top, it's wimpy simply because you're essentially using the same type style. You're just using maybe a bold and an italic version of it. Yeah, there's some differences in bold and italic, but check out the one on the bottom. It's a completely different type style. It's much bigger. It's even a different texture in its type. It's adding contrast through the choice of font that they have. And then in addition to that, they're throwing on different colors or they're throwing on different little embellishments that can really make everything pop out as well. So the first thing, when you're making contrast, try to pick typefaces that can have some contrast to them. One thing I'll say about that though is you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to have every typeface and every letter be drastically different. Just make the most important things be different and those can be popping out as well too. The second way you can add contrast is simply through size of things. And again, it's important to only have contrast for the most important parts of your design. Here you can see this page. Again, I've got a good header, I've got body copy, but if the header is the most important thing, if it's the number one thing I want to draw my attention to, then it needs to be the biggest in size. And you can see how they've not just chosen a different font, but they've made it much, much larger. If the subheads need to draw your attention to what each part is about, make those bigger or bolder. And you can see how they've made those bigger, bolder, and therefore much easier to draw my attention into. Hey, I don't even have to read this to know where my eyes should flow on this page. I don't know what the content is. I just know it's got a better hierarchy to it. A final way that you can add contrast to your design is through value. Now, another thing I want to clarify, there's a difference between color and value. There's no contrasting colors, there's complementary colors. Values are light and dark. And so there's things that are darker and to contrast that with things that are lighter. If you check out the one over here on the left-hand side, you can see it's basically black or dark text on a white background. It's easy enough to read. Hey, they've even got some good contrasting sizes and contrasting fonts and type styles. But the one that has a black background really stands out. It really pops. This is known as reverse text. Sometimes it's even easier to read reverse text because your eye can pick up on the contrasting values between the two. In addition to that, they've made I Read Shakespeare much, much bigger. There's your size contrast. They've got different fonts for the subheads and everything for the bottom part here being much, much bigger and different from the body copy as well. So you can play around with all these different ways of making contrast and bringing them all together, but value contrast is one of those things that can really draw your eye simply because you're changing the background or you're contrasting the values of what's in the foreground, the text, with what's in the background as well. All right, now a second way of adding good hierarchy to your design is by arranging everything in good alignment. So here's a basic little resume. You know, it's got all the stuff onto it. Again, it's very wimpy. There's not a lot of contrast to it. One particular problem with this is everything is center aligned, or actually it's different alignment. I've got a type up here, my headline is centered, but then all of my body copy and all my stuff is aligned over here on the left. And so my eye is kind of having to move back and forth, back and forth. Even if it had good contrast, it's not aligned very well. Here it is with good contrast and good alignment. Check this out. So each of the headlines and subheads is consistently bolder and bigger, but all of the information is now aligned right along one edge. Everything's shifted over to the left. My eye can go from the top to the bottom and quickly and easily read everything from here. So alignment is a way of organizing all of your things together, whereas contrast really makes things pop and scream. This brings everything into harmony and organizes it. Here's another great example of maybe an advertisement or even a web page. The one over here on the left has a variety of different alignments. They're all centered, but I've got different stuff. I've got stuff over here to the left and the right and the bottom. The one over here to the right, by aligning things to a common alleyway here, makes it much easier to read. Check it out again. So here's about the Moonstone Dreamcatchers. All of this body copy is aligned here. And then I've got all of this on the left-hand side, it's aligned to the center here. And the stuff at the bottom, it's aligned to the center down here. So I've got 3 different center alignments and not a one of them is centered on the page. Versus what's over here, boom, everything centered along the left side and the left side here. Makes it much, 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 much more easier to read whenever I do things like that. Now, that's not to say I don't like center alignment. Center alignment works. You can, as long as everything is kept nice and centered on the page. I've got good contrast, everything shows up well and is readable, so you can keep center alignment. Just make sure everything is nice and consistent on its alignment. Right alignment adds a little bit more punch, adds a little bit more flair to your design. Here's the same design, just thrown over to the left. This makes it a little bit more, I don't know, designy. Left aligned does the same thing. Again, use both of these with your other design principles. You've got contrasting fonts, styles, sizes, colors, in addition to a consistent alignment scheme for the page that's on here. This really makes everything pop as well. The final thing that you can do to your design is keep a good repetition of all your elements. Now, repetition is one of those things you got to plan for ahead of time. As you start to build out your design, be thinking about, okay, if I'm going to do one thing, try to repeat it over and over again, because people tend to come to appreciate and come to recognize things that can be reused. Check out this over here on the left. So first of all, got good contrast, got good alignment. Check out what's repeating on here. So I've got the same font. I've just got the bold and the non-bold, or the regular version of that font. So I'm repeating that. My subheads are all bold. All of the bullet points are exactly the same. I'm repeating those elements, and that makes this much, much easier to read. Check out the advertisement over here on the right-hand side. You can repeat just about anything. You can repeat colors. So in this case, they've got the orange and the blue and the black. Great, wonderful color scheme. And then it repeats on every part of it. I've got a little nice drawing, and the drawing has a certain style to it, and those are repeated throughout the design. As I've got my subheads, they're all the same font, they're the same size, they're the same color. If I've got my body copy that's describing each part of it, they're the same font, size, and color. It's even center aligned. All of this is working well. So this is a good harmonious design that I'm working through. There's no one little thing that's just popping out. It harmonizes together because of its repetition. Now, repetition also comes in handy whenever you're designing for multiple different designs. In this case, they've made a little reminder for staff meetings, but they're all different sizes. You've got a landscape that's really long and horizontal, you've got a vertical, and you've got a square version of it. But notice what they're repeating. First of all, we're repeating colors. They've got the green and the orange, they got the white with the drop shadow to it. They've got a orange square behind the text. Anytime you see the time, it's in green. Anytime you see the first thing at the top, the reminder, it's nice and small, it's out of the way. And then you got Friday and Tuesday, same font. They're even using some of the same style of illustrations for each one of these. No matter where I would see one of these, I know it's still talking about the same thing, or it's still reminding me about the meetings that they have. And so I know they're all part of the same overall design. When you create repetition, first off, think of your text in terms of levels. So obviously the headline is the number one thing. Think of it as Papa Bear. And so headlines need to be nice and bold, but every headline that I have needs to be consistent with the size and the font that I chose. Then when I have subheads, they'll be smaller. Think of those as Mama Bear. All the subheads throughout my page need to be the same size, font, and style. And then finally the text. This is Baby Bear. This is the third most important thing. My eyes are drawn into it. All the text needs to be the same size, font, and style. You never want to have two things that are drastically different because it simply creates too much confusion over your design. If you have decorative elements, think about using those and repeating those throughout your design. For instance, if you've got a page, you can have little decorative page titles, or if you've got drop caps or bullet points, those can be added to there. Even the placement of your numbers in your footer design. Every page could have the same kind of elements so that it flows from one page to the other. All right, now let's put this into practice. So I've taken just part of the Mighty Roma menu that we were going to be laying out, and I've got the headline and I've got just the dessert menu. You can see here that there's absolutely no system of hierarchy to it. Everything is just running together. So very quickly, I'm going to go through and see if we can start to add some different levels of contrast, repetition, and alignment just to make things a little bit easier. First off, let's do some contrast just on some spacing of things out. So if Mighty Roma is going to be the title to it, and here's the little subtitle, or in this case the catchphrase that they're using. Here's our dessert menu, so here's its own thing. Here's a little blurb about it, and then here's about the tiramisu, the cannoli, and the lemon, and this one. Looks like I'm running out of room. You can see one thing I've done different for this particular demonstration is I've put everything all in one text box. This is just to show you that everything can be done without having to have multiple things, though it is easier to do this. So right away, just by breaking things up and adding some contrast in the placement of things makes it a whole lot easier. Now, if I wanted to, I can add other things. So for instance, I'm going to get rid of the word Mighty Roma, and let's add on the title itself. I'm actually going to drag it over here. Let's start a new column, and I'm going to let this be kind of the one that I'm working on, and we'll copy everything over to here. So right away, Mighty Roma is nice, it's big, it's popping out. Hey, let's do something with this text to also make it stand out as well too. Now this is an important text. The authentic Italian crafted with passion, that's their catchphrase. So this can be something that kind of is a little bit more fun and stands out and is a little bit different from all of the other things that they've got. I found a great font earlier as I was playing around with all my fonts. One thing I encourage you to do is to kind of cull down some of your fonts and use some really good fonts that are nice and readable. I thought this one that was kind of a brush style is nice and readable and works really well with this. So Mighty Roma, authentic Italian crafted with passion. Hey, since my Mighty Roma is kind of centered up, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to center this text up too. It's nice, it's big, it's contrasting, it really stands out. Let's do the same thing for our dessert menu. Hey, since I'm using this font with the Art Brush Medium for this, let's use Art Brush Medium for my dessert menu. I'm going to take it, so I'm going to apply that font as well. Let's make it a little bit bigger. And so this will step this up. Now I can think about, okay, if this is going to be a subhead, let's make the body copy. Let's make this be a little bit different too. So maybe I'm going to make this smaller. I'm still going to keep it nice and readable, but maybe I'll swap this over to be something like a, let's see if I've got a good thinner text. That one looks nice and good as well too. Maybe I'll make it a little bit smaller depending on the size of it. And there's set it off from there. Another great way you can add some contrast in the alignment of things is by moving your text over just a bit. Now, since I've got everything inside of one text box, this is going to be a little bit more tricky. If I had everything in separate text boxes, it'd be easier. But I'm going to select my text, and I'm going to go up here to my paragraph settings, and I'm going to tell it to move everything over on the left-hand side. By increasing this number, you can see it pushes it, and now it has a new alignment starting from that side. Now things are starting to come together and really stand out. Now, as far as the other parts of my design, let's see if we can do that for down here. I definitely don't want it to have the same look as this particular subhead for each of my different items that are on my list. So for this, I'm going to keep it in the same font family as Avenir. So I'm going to highlight these. Maybe I'll do this entire thing here. So we'll keep it as, go up to the top. There's Avenir. I love that Avenir also comes in a variety of different sizes too. So I'll make this Avenir black to be nice and bold. And I'm going to place my text over here on the far right-hand side. I'll do that in just a second. We'll do this down here. So again, Avenir. And I'll choose book. We'll keep it the same size. So again, repeating this. So I'm going to set this to be 10 point. That'll buy us a little bit of room to place everything in here. Now it's nice and small. And I'm going to nudge everything over so that it has a consistent alignment up there too. Now it's really popping out and looking good. If I wanted the type for the price of it, excuse me, I couldn't remember that, to be something a little bit different. Let's see if we can pull on some of the same colors that were used for this design. So if I've got red in my logo, let's make this be nice and red for this one. And I'm going to throw this over to the right-hand side of my page. So edit, type. I'm going to insert a special other character, and this is going to be a right indent tab. And that's just going to simply put it over to the right. Now let's do the same design for all of the others. Hey, don't forget, you can also do some of the paragraph styles to make everything nice and easily, quickly defined. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of my text, just to make it go a little bit faster. I'm going to change this all over now to be Avenir book, set it to be 10 point. So now it's nice and fitting really well, but I'm going to save this up as a character style. So I'm going to go up to my type window, open my character styles. One click, I'm going to set this to be a new character style, and this will be the menu item. There we go. And we'll of course apply it to there. Now all I got to do is highlight my other text, and in one click got it set up to be the right size and right for there too. I do see it didn't pick up the actual size of this, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to set that to be 12 point. There's that there. We'll do the same for this. So one click will set it there, and we'll set this up. The main thing is be consistent about everything that you're doing. If you're going to make something bold, everything needs to be bold and it needs to be the same size. If you're going to make something red, we'll get rid of this. So we'll highlight these. Again, change up the color, make it red, and make it the same size. And let's throw on that tab that's on that side too. So we'll place that right here. Very quickly, very easy. By aligning all of these over to the right and making it consistent, you can see how it's making it much, much easier to read. Let's go over into preview mode. And right away you can see this is starting to clean up really, really nicely. Last thing I'm going to do, let's go in, I'm going to highlight this, say, hey, since this was nice and red, let's make a new character style for it. Got it set up for red text. Now all I got to do is highlight my other ones. Let's make that red text for those. Beautiful. And then the last thing, the alignment for this was a paragraph style. Remember, paragraph styles allow you to design an entire paragraph of text. So I'm going to make a new one for it. This will be my description. And let's highlight these, and in one click I can apply that description text for all of these as well too. It doesn't have to be overly complex, doesn't have to be complicated, but you can see some very, very basic things that I've done for this now make my design stand out and make it much easier to read. Now when I do this, you can see I'm starting to run out of a little bit of room, so I need to go back and I need to adjust a few things. The last thing you can do is to also start to play around with contrast in color of your background. Now one thing I do want to point out, if I'm going to change the color of my background, so I'm going to throw on just a big square there. I'm going to send it to the back by going to Object and Arrange. Let's send it backwards. As long as you've got a light background, the dark foreground is going to be readable. But the moment I change it to something dark, especially if I change it to black, it's not readable. It doesn't have to be as stark as this one. If I did something, say in the brown category, let's do something, let's say like this. Even though I can see the text, still not enough contrast. So this is where I need to go back in and I need to play around with the colors of my fonts. Naturally, if I just change it over to white, that pops out and that works out really, really good too. But other things I need to consider, like my logo up at the top, also may need to be lightened up or use a lighter version of that logo. Let's jump down and maybe change up some of this text just to show you the importance of it. It doesn't have to be white. Again, as long as the text is lighter than the background, then you've achieved a contrast in values, and that's what I'm looking for. You can see here, the red, it's showing up, but if I really want to have red, it needs to be a lighter version of red. Hey, maybe in this case, we'll actually throw on red, but we'll do a tint of red and kind of bring it up and contrasting with that. Now you can see the importance of contrast, getting things to jump out and pop out. You don't have to do it for the entire background. Some things that you could consider doing, I'm going to undo a couple of these. Let's bring this back to be the regular text. Maybe you just do the background of part of it. So if I wanted the dessert menu to be contrasting and different and pop out, now that really stands out and it looks really good in doing the process too. So I hope this gives you some things to think about on how you can apply a hierarchy standard to all the different parts of your design. Remember, whatever you do for one menu needs to be consistent with all the other menus. That's one of the things that I'm specifically looking for. In addition to this, play around with different fonts. Play around with fonts that are contrasting. Play around with the alignment of things and making sure everything is nice and consistent, but also make sure everything fits as well too. And then finally, play around with contrasting colors and values and see what works. For now, there's still nothing is due. We're going to continue working on this when we return back to class on Thursday, and we'll talk about ways we can update this and how we'll move forward. Again, I hope y'all have a great day. Please email me if you have any other problems or questions.